Dober dan in lep pozdrav vsem prisotnim. Moje ime je Maja Cimerman in prihajam iz inštituta Danes je nov dan, ki je tudi organizator današnjega dogodka. Okrogla miza pred nami nosi naslov Algoritmi v rokah države, vemo dovolj in je organizirana v sklopu dogodka Država in umetna inteligenca, kdo postavlja pravila prihodnosti. Še enkrat lep pozdrav vsem, ki ste se nam danes pridružili. Kako rečeno, bomo danes govorili o tem, kaj se zgodi, ko država uporablja umetno inteligenco, oziroma kakšna pravila bi morala veljati, ko z javnim denarjem kupujemo algoritme in ko ti algoritmi vplivajo na izvajanje javnih služb in javnih storitev. Glede te teme se bom pogovarjala z Davidom Cabom, direktorjem španske organizacije Civitas. Najin pogovor bo potekal v angleščini. Preden pa preklopiva na angleščino, na kratko uvod z moje strani v slovenščini. Na danes je nov dan smo lani vzpostavili register rabe umetne inteligence v javnem sektorju. Gre za javno dostopno bazo sistemov umetne inteligence, ki so v uporabi v javnem sektorju, torej na ministrstvih, na sodiščih, občinah, javnih univerzah in podobno. Register smo vzpostavili, ker je izjemno težko vedeti, kdo v javnem sektorju dejansko uporablja umetno inteligenco in v kakšnem kontekstu, torej s kakšnim namenom, s kakšnim ciljem. Posledično, ker nimamo te informacije, ker ne vemo, katero umetno inteligenco oziroma kdo uporablja umetno inteligenco, je težko tudi ocenjevati te sisteme, njihovo uporabnost in tudi njihov učinek in varnost. Naš register ima trenutno vpisanih 9 sistemov, vendar ocenjujemo, da je v rabi v javnem sektorju resnično nekaj deset sistemov umetne inteligence, ki seveda jih mi ne poznamo, oziroma celovitega vpogleda v sisteme umetne inteligence v javnem sektorju na danes je nov dan nimamo. Ocenjujemo, da takšnega vpogleda nimajo niti novinarji, verjamemo pa, da ga nimajo niti odločevalci oziroma na Ministrstvu za digitalno preobrazbo. Zakaj se nam zdi ta tema pomembna? Ker glede na naše pogovore z javnimi uslužbenci, glede na javna naročila in projekte, ki jih spremljamo, ocenjujemo, da bo raba umetne inteligence v javnem sektorju v naslednjih nekaj letih eksponentno poskočila. Pri tem se ne moremo oziroma ne smemo zanašati, da bo vse kar okej. Primeri iz tujine nam kažejo, da ko avtomatiziramo javne storitve, se velikokrat zgodi, da nekateri posamezniki ali pa nekatere družbene skupine so neupravičeno izpuščene oziroma izključene. Vprašanje umetne inteligence je tako vprašanje upravljanja države in javnih storitev in gre za eno izmed ključnih vprašanj eno izmed ključnih družbenih vprašanj. Odgovorna in transparentna uporaba umetne inteligence pa ne sme in ne more biti samo stvar prizadevanj civilne družbe, ampak mora biti rezultat premišljenih ukrepov in celostnega zakonodajnega okvira za varno uporabo umetne inteligence. In s tem v mislih smo na danes je nov dan pripravili priporočila za Vlado Republike Slovenije in Ministrstvo za digitalno preobrazbo za vzpostavitev registra uporabe umetne inteligence v javnem sektorju. Tak register bi zagotovil sistematiziran vpogled v rabo umetne inteligence v javnem sektorju in je zaradi tega predpogoj, da imamo sploh lahko družbeno debato o vpeljevanju oziroma avtomatizaciji javnih storitev. Je predpogoj, če želimo imeti nadzor nad zakonito in odgovorno rabo umetne inteligence in je predpogoj za zaupanje javnosti. Pri tem na danes je nov dan opozarjamo, da v veliki meri bi tak register tako ali tako že vključeval informacije, ki so dostopne po zakonu o dostopu do informacij javnega značaja, je pa do njih izjemno težko priti, ker ko iščeš takšne informacije, moraš zelo specifično vedeti, kaj iščeš, in moraš tudi biti sposoben takšne sisteme imenovati, imeti veliko informacij že o njih. Poleg tega je problem tudi v tem, da so informacije o sistemih, ki so že v uporabi, izjemno razpršene, objavljene so morda v letnih poročilih organov ali pa na spletnih straneh institucij, ni jih pa tako preprosto najti. Zato v bistvu mi pozivamo tudi odločevalce oziroma ministrstvo, da proaktivno pristopi k temu vprašanju in vzpostavi register, ki bi sistematiziral, ki bi na enem mestu objavil vse sisteme umetne inteligence, ki so uporabljeni v javnem sektorju. Zdaj, register sam po sebi seveda ne more zagotoviti odgovorne in varne uporabe umetne inteligence, je pa predpogoj, da imamo lahko družbeno razpravo, družbeno debato o tem, kateri sistemi avtomatiziranega odločanja so sprejemljivi in kdaj je njihova raba upravičena. Da bi tak register lahko bil koristen, seveda mora zadostiti nekaterim pogojem. Kot prvo, mora nuditi celovite informacije o sistemih, torej tudi tehnične informacije o modelu in podatke, informacije o podatkih, na katerih je ta model bil natreniran. Poleg tega tak register mora vključevati vse sisteme, ki so v uporabi, torej tudi sisteme, ki jih uporablja policija, vojska, tudi sisteme, ki več niso v uporabi, ali pa sisteme, ki jih šele kupujemo ali pa razvijamo. In mislimo, da tak register tudi mora biti oblikovan uporabnikom prijazno in razumljivo. Toliko o samem predlogu za vzpostavitev registra. Mi smo predlog objavili tudi na spletnem mestu Danes je nov dan. Vsi ste vabljeni, da si ta predlog preberete, in če imate kakšna vprašanja, komentarje, seveda bomo veseli, če nam te komentarje tudi podelite oziroma pošljete na Danes je nov dan. Medtem pa bomo mi v naslednjih tednih poskrbeli, da ta priporočila tudi delimo in predstavimo odločevalcem. Zdaj se pa premikam na angleški del naše današnje okrogle mize. David, thank you and apologies for the Slovenian introduction. Welcome to Ljubljana.
Zdravo.
I just spent the last couple of minutes explaining our proposal for AI register. This is also a topic you at Civio worked on within a Spanish coalition of organizations that is active on digital rights. So maybe if we can start off by you explaining how you as Civio, organization that doesn't necessarily directly work on digital rights, started working on the idea of AI register. So how did this idea come about?
Yeah, well, hello, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. So, we are a non-profit newsroom based in Spain. So basically, we've been working for 12 years trying to make the Spanish public administrations more transparent and more accountable. So we do things like monitor the budget, check public procurement. We try to monitor lobbying so we know who's influencing the laws. And everything we do is focused on trying to have a more open state, let's say, or a more open administration that works for citizens, so citizens can participate. So we are not, I mean, we have technical skills, but we are not a digital rights organization working about these new things. We are more of a traditional public service journalism. But 6 years ago, right before the pandemic, as part of the work we do is we read the official gazette. Well, not me, but my co-director, she reads the official gazette every morning to look for contracts and appointments or changes in regulations and laws and things like that, and to explain it to people so people knows what's going on and how they are impacted. So 6 years ago, we started talking about, there was a system for poor people and vulnerable people to get a discount in the electricity bill. So if you had low income, you could get like 30% of your electricity if you proved certain things. The thing is, in 2019, the system was changed. So basically, everybody had to reapply. And what we found out is that like 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, like at least like 2 million people still hadn't applied, right? So it was a big thing, and we started making a lot of noise about it. Like, come on, everybody, you have to apply for the new system, otherwise you're gonna lose the discount. And what we found out, that the system was kind of very complicated because you had to fill a complex form and you had to go to your electricity company to deliver like a form with PDF. And this is maybe okay for us, but for an old person or a low-educated person or someone, I don't know, like it's hard for certain people, right? So we built an online assistant together with the market regulator to help people understand, because many people didn't even know if they were allowed to get the discount. So we're working a lot on this and doing advocacy and explaining it. And the thing is, when we were building this assistant, we had a lot of questions because it wasn't clear in the law if certain cases were correct or not, blah, blah, blah. So, and also we started getting calls and emails from people that use our application and said, oh, you told me that I could get the discount, but then I didn't get it, and what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So that's when we decided to understand what was going on. And basically, the way that the system was set up was that the electricity companies would introduce your data into a website that the government had created. And this website, there was a system called Bosco. It was a kind of a black box that, because the electricity companies cannot check your income, so the electricity company doesn't know if you are allowed to get a discount, but the government knows. So the government built this small thing, and the electricity company was using that. So we started using access to information, which is the tool we use the most, to try to understand the internals of the system. How is this thing working? What is the technical specification? So after months of fighting, we got the technical specification, and we managed to prove that there were mistakes, and that in certain cases, this system was rejecting applications that were valid. Like, for example, if you were a widow, but with a low income, and you could get the discount for being low income, but not for being a widow. But the form was asking you, are you a pensioner? So you say yes, but it's, oh no, but you would get the discount for low income, not for being a widower. So it was very complicated and not very helpful and not very friendly. So we managed to prove that there were mistakes in the system that was rejecting valid applications. So the government said that they would fix it, blah, blah, blah. We are still fighting about that because there's still some things that are not clear. But the important thing is that we suddenly realized, okay, this thing was not working well. And suddenly it's like, okay, what other systems are not working well, right? We found this because we were looking into this because this is part of what we do, but what other systems are making decisions that are impacting the rights of citizens, right? So this was 2019 originally, before all the AI thing got crazy, but over the last 6 years, everything is AI. So we helped create a network of organizations in Spain. We have like Amnesty International, we have people that work at borders, we have people that focus on anti-discrimination, anti-race discrimination. So together with other people working in different topics, we built a network. And one of our first goals as the network is to push the Spanish government to create a register of AI and automated decision-making systems. We can talk later about the difference. But basically, we want to know which other systems are being used in the public administration, because we are afraid that there may be mistakes or that more and more systems are being introduced that could impact the rights of citizens.
And within these efforts, within the coalition, you prepared a report and policy proposal. Can you talk a bit more about the content of that report and what are your proposals?
So to make it a bit more concrete, because we didn't want to just say, oh, build a register, but we wanted to kind of push and say, no, but build it like this. So we hired a researcher, Soisig, which is coming from the French government, who had experience in government and who had been following this topic for a while. So we created a report. We can put the link somewhere later. It's in English. So the first thing we did was looking at which other registers had been created already. This was done last year. So we look at the best examples, kind of the best practices in registers. So for example, the UK, or especially the Dutch register is very good, partly because they had a lot of scandals in the Netherlands. So the government had to, first they had to resign, and then they had to start working on transparency of these systems. So we are looking at which information they have, how are they legally regulated, do they include all the systems or only a subset, things like that. So the first thing we do is to have a list, and so you can see how it works in all the different countries in Europe, also at the below national level. So sometimes you have cities or regions that are working on this. So we do that, and then we have a set of recommendations, which the main ones would be to make it compulsory, because if it's an optional register, then you're not gonna get everything, so you're kind of lost, because it's like you don't know if something is not there because they didn't think it's important. So make it compulsory, have like a centralized register. And another important thing is the definition of what is in the register is very important, because suddenly now everything is AI, and when politicians or people talk, everything is suddenly AI. But there are a lot of systems in public administrations that are not technically that complex, but still have a big impact on the rights of people because they are making a decision. So sometimes you have like some rules, or for example, you get certain points for certain things, and then if you go above certain limit, suddenly you get denied some permit or something. So that's what is normally called as automated decision making. So if a system is making a decision without a human being involved, for us that should be in the register. So AI is a technical detail in a way. It explains how the thing is implemented, which can be important, and it has some consequences because, as you know, if you use ChatGPT or whatever, like machine learning is not fully predictable, it's not deterministic, it's kind of probabilistic, so some things it works differently, whatever, or some things cannot be explained because they're machine learning, so there are technical important consequences. But for us, what is very important is that these things are making a decision, and they are limiting, for example, if you get a certain benefit or social benefit, or if you can access some things. So for us, that is an important thing, to make the definition very wide and put a lot of systems in there. And this is not just us saying this, but actually, for example, the Dutch register is working like this. I think we can talk later, but because the AI Act is saying that some high-risk systems should be public, but we think it's a good opportunity to have a wider register that includes other things that maybe are not officially high risk because they're not machine learning, but still in practice they have the same consequences. So that's a big one. And the other one would be, another recommendation was to involve civil society from the start. Involve them in order to kind of design or see what's missing in the register, because, for example, something that is very important normally for civil society is to understand like who is building the system, why is it being built, I mean, was something else there, or why cannot there be a human doing this? What's the logic behind introducing this system? Also, like, is there a human involved in the process? So for civil society will help you define the register and what is important for us to monitor things from the outside. But also, it's good if you can involve civil society, but it's like extra nice. If you can involve them when you introduce a system like this, because many times civil society is in touch with the affected communities. So, for example, we work with people that, how you call it, social services organizations that are helping like poor people or immigrant people. So they are the ones that know the best how a certain system may affect them, because maybe the system is designed to ask for certain information or for certain ideas, and then the people working with the communities will tell you, no, but this is very complicated for someone who is just arrived in the country or whatever. So I don't know, like talking to civil society and getting them involved in the design of the register, but also when you introduce a new system, so they can talk before the thing is deployed, when sometimes it's already too late.
So to the ladies in the back, feel free to, there's seats here. I mean, we just started, so it's going to be a long time for standing the whole, okay, but welcome. David, speaking of definition, what we find is that in the context of digitalization and conferences and bragging, everything is AI. And then in the context of compliance and legislation, nothing is AI. So, yeah. So, okay, you come up with this proposal to develop an AI register, algorithmic register. You present it to the government. It's been a year now. So is the register already developed?
No. No, well, it's a few months since no, it's not a full year since we presented it to the government. But okay, here I have to become a bit critical of my government. The Spanish government has been saying for the last few years in Europe, in Brussels, that we are the most advanced AI country in Europe. I think it's not true. I'm here to tell you that it's not true, and that
Is it
Slovenia
Slovenia?
should Slovenia should fight to be. No, yeah. But we had a very well. I guess it's everywhere. Like all the governments want to say that they are on top of AI and they are very innovative. So the Spanish government has been saying a lot of nice words everywhere, and we were the first country in Europe to have an AI agency. Even if and we had a sandbox, we have a lot of things, but then the problem is that they don't actually do anything because the people that don't get appointed, but the organization is created. Anyway, so the thing is the response was like, yeah, sure, we are very open to registries and pro-transparency, everybody's pro-transparency, but at the same time they say, no, but we are going to do whatever the AI Act says we have to do, which for us is a big mistake because if you are going to have to set up the reporting structures and the procedures to collect information to report to Brussels for the AI Act, it's a great opportunity to collect all the information about all these, not only about AI, but also all these automated decision-making systems, so you can get better feeling of what you actually have deployed internally, and you can do something more useful for your citizens and your civil society. So since you already have to do some work, why don't you do it well and do it properly? But the Spanish government is right now saying like kind of waiting and saying like they're gonna do the minimum, but we are telling them to look at UK or the Netherlands where they have a wider scope and they're trying to do things better.
Maybe a minute about the AI Act for everyone who hasn't spent days reading the AI Act. AI Act envisions establishes an EU database of AI systems. However, and this is what David is talking about, the governments are now saying we will already have a database. It's going to be an EU database. There's no need to have a national register. However, that EU database has its own shortcomings. Namely, firstly, the EU database under the AI Act will include only high-risk systems. That means not all systems used within public administrations will be included in that database. Actually, majority of systems will not be included. So, for example, speech-to-text system that is used in many agencies and like within many levels of public administration in Slovenia would not be part of that register. Same with, for example, chatbots, government chatbots that are responsible for giving citizens advice or answering questions about legislation, for example. Those too wouldn't be included in that kind of a register. The other problem with having a database that's focused only on high-risk systems is that the AI Act allows deployers relatively easy to say they are not high risk and hence exclude themselves from the reporting or very much limit how much information they need to report within the EU database. The other limitations of the EU database are also that systems used by the police and systems used in the context of migration and asylum would not be included in the public EU database. We propose that those systems also, even though in only maybe limited, even though if not all information about them is included, at least relevant information and the information that can be accessed publicly should be part of the database. Also, in the EU database, registration is compulsory only for systems that have been deployed that will be deployed after August 2026. So all the systems that currently are used will not be part of the database or will be part of the database only if substantial changes to the systems are made. So that just shows that EU database is maybe a good start, a good idea, but doesn't necessarily do enough to ensure transparency and access to information by citizens. And that's why I agree with you that when governments say we already have one database, this will just be duplication of the work. We should rather think of this as something of how to improve the transparency requirements under the AI Act.
Yeah, and I don't think it's duplicated effort, because basically, if you collect all the information about all these automated systems here, I mean, then you just have to press a button and then send the subset that is relevant to the EU. It's not that you don't have to do the same thing twice. You already have, I mean, it's like instead of collecting this information, you collect the whole thing and then you send to Europe whatever is relevant for the AI Act, which is, for example, what the Dutch government is doing. If you go to the Dutch register, you see like hundreds of algorithmic systems, and then some of them are marked as high risk, and then those ones will go to the central database in Europe, but you don't have to do the same thing twice. You just do it once, and then you say, okay, this one is high risk, this one is not. So that's it. Also, another limitation, I mean, it's unclear at the moment. You know more than me about the AI Act, and these things are still settling. It's not clear. But it's not clear what AI is, because it's this kind of autonomous system that is learning, is not clear, whatever. But it looks like certain rule-based systems are probably not included in that definition. So, for example, in Spain, there is a system to, if you're a woman and you go to the police because you've been attacked by your husband, there is a risk evaluation system based on a certain questions that determines the risk of how the risk you are in. So based on that, they will give you more or less coverage by the police. So that's not AI, but that's resulting in a decision. So that wouldn't be in the register. And that system, at least, is everybody in Spain knows about it, because there's been a lot of publicity, even if no one knows what exactly are the values and the scores. That's not public, but at least at least you know that there is a system. But what we found out, for example, is that there is a similar system in prisons that no one was talking about, no one knew about it. So basically, if you are in prison and you apply or you want to get a permit because you want to go on the weekend to see your family or whatever, there is another system that evaluates the risk that you're gonna go back to prison or not. So the fact that there is that system making certain questions and giving you certain risk based on whether you're a foreigner or not, for example, that wasn't public. So we think that those systems, even if they are not AI, we should at least know that these systems exist, and then we can discuss about how much information should be public or not. But that depends more on the quality of your access to information law. So should you be able to get access to, I don't know, but those are definite issues. Because the thing is, once you know that the system is there, then you can start looking into it. Like, for example, maybe you don't get the internals of the system because it's a secret. But maybe you can ask about, is there any monitoring of the results? When was it last modified? Who's checking this? Is there any complaints? I don't know. You can try at least to get information around the system, even if you don't get the internals. But the thing is, if you don't even know that the system exists, you can never monitor it. And we can talk later about how do we find out about the system. Usually it's because some politician talks about it randomly in some conference, and suddenly you're like, what? Like, oh, wait, there is a system checking this? And so that's the idea of the register. You should at least know first what's going on, and then you can then have separate fights for each system, like, oh, should I be allowed to look into this or not? That's a different question.
And this is exactly kind of the issue we came across when we were populating our own register, AI register in Slovenia, because how do you populate this register with relevant AI systems? You can ask for information, but to ask for information, you already need to know that the system exists. You need to be very precise. Often you need to know the name of the system, otherwise you will not receive the answer. So for us to even populate the register with the 9 systems we have now, there was a lot of conference presentations that we had to go through, a lot of yearly reports, a lot of funding reports, and this kind of helped us map what are the systems that are being currently in use, and then ask questions about those systems. However, once we ask questions about the systems, there's a second barrier, and most commonly why our requests for access to information are rejected is because this is business secret, right? Some sort of, this is a relationship between us and a private company. This is their IP, hence we cannot give you more information than just basic information. So maybe what's your experience? You've uncovered, or you write a lot about the AI systems being used in Spain. You've uncovered several of those and you researched in detail several of those. So how did you manage to get access to those systems?
Yeah, so, well, first we had to do kind of similar stuff, like also looking at what the politicians are saying here or there. The good thing is that everybody wants to be very innovative, so everybody wants to say that they're innovating a lot. So sometimes we find about systems that way because a certain president of a region, for example, he was talking about we are going to solve unemployment because we are going to have AI matching people in the public job market thing. And we're like, what? So we could ask information about that. Then we ask for the specs of the system that is supposed to do. It's like Tinder for unemployed people in northern Spain. And they told us no because of intellectual property, even if the system is owned by the state. We are fighting that in court. So, I mean, we are still finding what we can do with our limited access to information law, but we had to do that. Another thing we tried was we did access to information we asked every ministry which automated systems or AI systems do you have. The problem about asking for lists is that if they don't have a list, and I understand, it's like you ask the Freedom of Information Department, it's like, I don't know, because I don't keep track of this. So normally what they do is they kind of look around and try to think about what do I have that is AI, or maybe they ask different departments, but you cannot be sure that that's a complete list. And actually what happens sometimes is that depending on who asks, it gets a different response because there's not an official list, so they have to improvise or say, I don't know. So we tried that. We tried also, well, I'm kind of jumping on the script, but another thing we do is sometimes we look at the procurement data. So we look for certain keywords or certain companies. So we had to do kind of different things. But maybe to go back to the script, I will talk to the. I will talk to the. No, but another actually, it's not all bad in Spain. Actually, the fact is like because we have a very kind of almost federal government system. So we have 17 regions, and so now it's like mixed. Some are left, some are right, and they kind of want to look. Everybody wants to look like innovative. So the national government is not going ahead with the registry yet because they are kind of slowly walking into it. But some regional governments are. So, for example, we had a good example at Valencia, the region of Valencia, like south of Barcelona. In that region, they created a registry, and actually they talked to us. They wanted to present the system, the thing before they launch, so it was good. So they have a lot of fields. What is very important for us also is that they've changed their access to information law to say that all these automated systems, and it's not just AI, but it's all these automated systems, they need to be tracked, and there needs to be a list of that. So it's good that they changed the law. So for us, that was very good. Like, you don't need to rely on the AI Act. You can actually go beyond that and have your own law that is better than the AI Act.
But this is regional law.
Yes. Yeah, because there is a national access to information law, but then the regions can improve it. They can adapt it and say, oh, I'm gonna go beyond that. So they changed their regional access to information law. We have a lot of laws, more laws than everyone. And the other good example we have is in the Basque Country. They also wanted to look transparent. Well, not only look, but actually they did well here. They built a register, and for us it was a good example because we actually found a couple of systems that they mentioned without much detail, but they were talking about some systems in the health sector because every region in Spain controls the health system in the region. So they were talking about some cancer detection thing. So then through FOIA and through procurement data, we managed to get more information about this system that was being introduced as a pilot to detect skin cancer. And that's one of the reports we published, because we showed, and this is a good example of how these things work. Like the company, they published a paper about their own system, like a scientific paper, saying that they were very good detecting cancer and it was like 90% efficiency and great. Then we found another paper from other researchers trying the system with other samples, with other people, and the performance was like 65%. So 1 in 3 cancers were not being detected, because as soon as the system was trained on certain type of people, like white skin people, if you suddenly try with more mixed people, suddenly the performance goes down. And different things, or also like depending on how the picture is done, like the sample data is pictures done in a certain way, but then if you use it for pictures that you do in the hospital, maybe with different lights or different distance or whatever, suddenly the performance goes down. So in a real setting, the performance was much worse. So so then we talked to the Basque government. It's like, why are you introducing this, which is only like 65% accurate? And we talked to doctors, and they were like, this is useless because I cannot rely on this. So now they are saying that they are evaluating whether they will go ahead with the pilot or not. But this is a good example of how these things are being introduced a lot, often without enough monitoring. So we are not against technology in general. We just want to know what's going on, so people that know about these things can look at it and say, hey, look what's going on, because you need to be very careful with this. So it was a good example of how having a first indication in a registry can say, hey, what's going on? And then you can start digging a bit more and find out the issues.
And I think this is also a good example that shows that what we are arguing for is not just a register for the sake of a register. Our goal isn't transparency per se. Our goal is to ensure accountability when using AI systems, but it's really hard to have public accountability if we do not know what is being used, right? So I think really we are talking about systems that can have huge impact on people's lives, and that's how we need to kind of evaluate them and think about them, right? This is not just business as usual. Technology, in this case specifically, also really can have huge impact on huge amounts of people, groups of people, and so on. I think the other thing is also that the registry per se is not, so we don't think that currently when we ask ministries for like, tell us what are the AI systems you use, and they tell us we don't use an AI system, or they say we just use ChatGPT sometimes, even though we know that's not true. I don't think that's necessarily like out of bad intentions. I think this is also because of like lack of internal communication or internal awareness. So I think like when we think about this register, this is also something that can help us develop, like help us increase transparency, and also help public officials, people who are buying and developing these systems, to understand what is already being used, what are some other institutions using, what is their experience. For example, when we are talking to like people who work in the public sector, we often find they're also kind of lost and frustrated, because on one hand, they feel like they need to be developing or buying AI systems, because as you say, this is very popular right now. It feels like we need to be developing these systems so that we don't fall behind. But at the same time, these same people who are buying these systems or developing them even in-house don't necessarily have good understanding of these systems, don't have the understanding of how to be compliant with legislations, don't even know maybe what some other institutions are doing. So yeah, for me, I think a register is not just a public-facing tool, it's also a tool that could be very useful for the public administration.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Well, two things. I totally agree. Before I was doing this, well, some years ago, I was working a lot on open data. I was trying to push public administrations to release their data and to create a portal with the data sets they had and stuff like that. And I remember talking to some public officials later who told me that actually the biggest user of those portals were their own public workers, because one department didn't know what the other department had or how they were using it. So I think it's going to be the same with these algorithmic registers, because it's very useful to know if you are in the department of economy or whatever, and that to understand what, for example, like how are other departments buying these systems? How are they? I mean, who knows about this? How are they redacting the tender documents, or how do they deal with the issues and stuff like that? So I think it would be a great learning tool for public workers to have this, for public officials. And the second one would be, I mean, I'm a software engineer by training, and before I work in nonprofits, I was like a boring corporate developer. So I do know some basic.
And now he talks about AI legislation.
Now I'm not a developer. I'm still boring. No, but I understand how the chatbots and LLMs and all these things work basically, and what I find is that I mean I know the limitations. What scares me is that some people believe that the computer is always right, and that is or something that we always tell people is that I mean I think in the general audience, as soon as something is very technical, the reaction is like, oh, I don't know about this. It must be right? So there is sometimes what happens is that the computer system is put kind of on a pedestal, and it's like whatever it says, right? And that's very dangerous. And I'm here. We need to be able to investigate what those things do, and we need to know the limitations that these things make mistakes. If you use ChatGPT or even worse, Grok on Twitter or whatever, you know these things invent stuff. So we need to understand what these things can do, which can be very good, and what they cannot do, and we need to have that discussion, and that is helped by having a register so we know what's going on.
Recently in Spain, there was an experiment on predictive policing. And I think that kind of ties with your statement that we also need to understand what is the effect of these systems, how do they work before we necessarily implement them. We need to kind of test them. So maybe can you talk a bit about that example?
Yeah, this is quite scary. I mean, there were well, it's a kind of weird story because there is no register, so this wasn't official. But sometimes the big boss of police or some department or some police official would say, we are testing this AI system to detect when people lie to police. Like if you go to the police and say that your iPhone got stolen, the police was testing a system to find out if you were saying the truth or not, which is like, how do you do this? And there were no details, and they didn't want to give us any information. So after this was like a couple of years ago, and it wasn't clear if they were using it everywhere or how they trained this thing or how it was working. So we managed to find, like a few months ago, a paper and to get some information. But basically, it was kind of an experiment. The scary thing is like this was like 2 or 3 police people, very motivated to use AI, that decided to ask a very senior official to classify some reports are true or false, and use that to train a system, and then to pilot that in different stations, which we don't have full details about which ones. But basically what we found through the paper is that they had found a list of, it was very simple in reality. They had trained a neural network, blah, blah, blah. So some keywords like iPhone would be more probability of lying, or if you say back, because like if they attack you from the back, is because that's probably false, because you use the theory is like, no, because if you say that you don't see the face of the attacker, that's usually false. Or if you say helmet, that's like more probability of that you're lying, which is I'm explaining this and it doesn't make any sense, but I know, but this is how the system works. And what's even worse is that it wasn't even based on what you said, because the police report is written by the police in the station. So you go there and say, look, my iPhone was stolen. And then the guy is asking you questions, and then you reply, and he's typing a summary of what you say. It's not even verbatim. It's not even really what you said. It's more like his summary and understanding. So based on that, which you didn't even say, and based on certain words and answering the questions, he's gonna say, oh, well, you got hit from the back by a guy with a helmet that stole your iPhone. False. It's like, what? So it's totally random. The good news is that the police said that they are not gonna go ahead with this, so they don't use it anymore. But the fact that for, I don't know, 3-4 years, they were talking about this and making experiments with this without giving any official explanation of how this works, without talking to experts about, like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are you evaluating your own reports? I mean, to me, it's totally crazy. But it's a mix of, like, lack of understanding, I would guess, and also this crazy obsession to be the most innovative. So there is a lot of hype around AI, which is also one of the big issues we find in all these things. Like, everybody wants to be so innovative and everybody wants to be the first one, that it makes it a bit scary. Because, and I guess we had another thing we wanted to talk about, which is the obsession to innovate is one risk. The obsession to be the most efficient is another one. And another thing we are seeing in Spain, for example, is we've been complaining in Spain, we've been complaining a long time about some procedures, some processes are now more and more online, and a lot of old people and vulnerable people are being left behind because they don't understand, and our electronic ID system is very complicated. So they need to go to an office to talk to a human, to talk to a public servant. But since the pandemic, in Spain, in most of the offices, you need to get an appointment, because during the pandemic, they said, no, you cannot just come and queue. You need to get an appointment first. The problem is that there are not enough appointments for everybody. So there is a long-running issue. Like, it's very hard to get appointments for certain things, like going to the Social Security to apply for your pension, because they say, but you don't need to come. You just do it online. But of course, many people cannot do it online. So we've been complaining a lot about the online thing is too complex for many people. You need to have more public officials working, helping people. And the answer now, the recent answer from the government is, don't worry, we are going to put a chatbot on the website. And then everybody will talk to the chatbot and everybody's going to be fantastic, which is really scary for us, because the chatbots are not always correct. Sometimes they are good and they can maybe help with some basic information, but the more it gets complicated, the more they lie. And actually, an important point we always talk about is that I think most of us here, we are well educated. I assume we know how to use a computer. We are not too poor. It's okay. We can manage. But especially the social benefits, they need to reach the vulnerable communities, which is poor, low educated. Maybe they don't speak Slovenian because they just arrived. There are certain communities that are struggling. And especially those when we try to explain our personal situation to the administration to ask for a benefit, it's okay, because, like, I live here and I have this many children and I'm married and that's it. But especially the poor people, they have very complex scenarios, and we know because we get a lot of emails, because we try to explain the benefits to people and we get a lot of particular questions, and it's like, I'm disabled and I'm not working and I don't have an official residence because I'm renting here, but I cannot register myself here because I only have a room, and I'm divorced, but maybe I didn't leave my home because I couldn't move out. So the more you go kind of down in the pyramid, the more vulnerable you are, the more complicated your situation is. And those situations are the hardest to reply, and a chatbot is gonna screw up. So for us, that's why we keep pushing, like, say, AI can be useful, but it cannot replace the actual having a public worker helping you and looking into your case and trying to guide you through the whole thing.
Maybe I would just add that on one hand, there's a hype, like technology is popular. There is kind of this idea that we need IT solutions that are going to make our work, our public administration more efficient, like it will work better and so on. So I think on one hand, there's like the hype of we need IT solutions, we need AI. I think the other part is also that we've been lied to, and we've been lied to that AI works perfectly. We've been lied to that AI can tell you who's the criminal, that AI can tell you who deserves social benefits, that AI can tell you just from looking at some picture what's happening on it. And sometimes it does. And when you use your GPT, it usually works, right? But that doesn't mean it works in all cases. That doesn't mean it works in very complex situations. And that doesn't mean that it's worth the risk of kind of risking that it will work when allocating such important like basic rights as social benefits, as right to, I don't know, reduce price of electricity and stuff like that, right? So really, we need to ask ourselves also about like how accurate these algorithms are, what are the results that they can provide. I think now maybe we can turn to the public. Maybe someone has a question about anything for David or me.
Or if you disagree, you can say we're...
Or maybe if you're testing an AI system and you want to debate with us.
I have a question. I found it very interesting, your comment about the obsession with innovativeness in Spain. And I was thinking about the Slovenian context, the Slovenian administrative environment. Maybe I should present myself first. I'm coming from the Faculty of Public Administration. So I'm not sure, and I maybe wanted to hear your thoughts about that. I'm not sure that there is such a hype among Slovenian public servants. And I'm not saying that AI is not used in the public sector, but I think that in general, the Slovenian administrative environment is very much conservative, a very traditional public administration, where things usually get done from, not from the bottom up, but from the top down. So I think that if we talk about some hype regarding innovativeness, there should be like some innovative leader who will set this trend. I will stop here. I would like to hear your thoughts about that.
Just to clarify before you answer, the innovation hype is not coming from the public officials. It's coming more from the politicians, the ministers that want to look like, wow, Spain is great. Blah, blah, blah. It's not the administration is quite reserved also, but it's the politicians that are trying to sell the message that Spain 2030 we are going to be the leaders of Europe.
And
I don't know how it is in Slovenia.
The other source of hype is also IT companies that come and offer IT solutions, AI solutions. I think for sure that can also be part of this kind of push. You know, like if you're a public institution that is working with not enough people and you have hard time catching up maybe, and then an IT company comes and tells you, we will reduce your administrative burden, right? I don't know, reporting by 30%, that might look like an exciting idea. Now, like in terms of the general, like, is there an excitement about within the public administration? We might be biased because we often talk with people who are buying or developing these tools within public administration. And among those, we have found that they feel this pressure to buy or develop AI tools. We have also talked to people that I will not name, but we've talked to people within institutions that told us, look, we already developed this AI solution now we have our lawyers looking at it and making sure and telling us how to use it so that we're compliant and in line with the AI Act, right? So you first have the tool and then you try to figure out how to use, how are you even allowed to use it? And that's why from our perspective, also in terms of the AI register, it is recommended, and we would like to see that AI register would also include procurement of AI tools. So AI tools already at the point when the idea to buy or to develop something comes up, right? Because that really allows you to follow the life cycle of the tool, and that also allows you to kind of look at it and evaluate it critically as the public before negative consequences happen, right? Before we have, and in that regard, I think Slovenia has been lucky. We didn't have any big scandals with AI use yet, but I think for us to avoid that in the future, it's important that these tools are critically evaluated and debated even before they are implemented, right? We don't want to have situations where we will have like people having their rights violated and then have a public debate. But also in terms of the hype, maybe someone else in the room has some comments or thoughts.
Yeah, I can also give an example of innovation for innovation's sake. It was like 2 months ago, the Spanish drug agency, they had a website where you can go and put the name of any drug that is legal in a medicament that is legal in Spain, and you get the prospectus thing, the paper thing with all the indications and all that stuff. I don't know, prospectus, I don't know how to say, the paper, you know, the leaflet that goes inside the box. So fine, so you could go and check, blah, blah, blah. For some reason that nobody asked for this, but they thought it was a good idea to launch a chatbot where you would put a question like, oh, I have a headache. Oh, no, you had to, if you make a random question, it didn't want to answer. You say, oh, I have a headache. What should I do? It's like, no, I'm here only to answer about drugs, certain drugs. So you had to put the name of a medicine, and then it would try to answer your question. Like, oh, should I take this in the morning or at night, blah, blah. It would look into the prospectus and try to reply the question. The problem is that it was very badly, well, it's not badly designed. The problem is that these things are limited, and it's very easy for them to make mistakes. So you could ask questions like, for example, I'm giving this medicine to my 5-year-old child. How much should be the dosage? How much drug should I use? And it would get confused because there are like different type of the same medicine has like different concentrations, stuff like that. So it would basically give you the wrong answer. So as soon as they launched this, everybody on social network was like asking questions saying, no, this is not correct. And they had to close it after 24 hours. So for me, it's like crazy that they launched this without test. I mean, the fact that they launched this being the drug agency without further testing and that they remove it after 24 hours, to me, it's a clear indication that someone thinks it's a good idea to innovate, but it's like, it's very scary. So it's just an example. Maybe you're in Slovenia, you're more sensible people, you're not doing these things. But in Spain, it's like everybody wants to suddenly say, wow, I built this, it's so cool, which is really scary.
Our colleague from Državljan D, Domen Savic, also present today here, he's mapping the use of surveillance cameras in Slovenia by Slovenian municipalities. And if I'm not mistaken, Domen, one of the findings is that the use is quite widespread. And one of the things that Domen did not find often is a good reasoning why these cameras are used or what is the effect of the camera use. And for me, that is the definition of hype, right? You're using something because you feel you should be using it, not because you have evidence that backs the effectiveness of these systems.
Hello. Yes, but that's not, I think, relevant to the AI debate. I think it also begs the question of justifying the decision-making process. So it's also about the placebo effect of the CCTV in a political sense, and that can be mirrored to the debate of the AI, where you have decision makers using or supporting the development of the AI because it takes away their responsibility for the decision making by them saying, oh, look, it's a black box, we just push play, right? And that, I think, is the scary part, because when you look at, for example, when you look at the CCTV systems, and when you, so fine, okay, we found out that, I don't know, 60% of Slovenia municipalities is using some type of CCTV on some type of public land, and that almost nobody knows why exactly. But the big question, or the biggest question, is how did they decide on the usage, and how are they mapping the success of the usage, right? And even there you find a big black hole saying, well, you know, these are cameras and they protect us preemptively, so to speak. And I'm worried that focusing on, I mean, on the field of AI and the development of the AI tools, which are basically supported by grants and EU schemes, which is also one of the most important, at least in my opinion, reasons that these things get developed in the first place, because EU is throwing public money at them and they have to spend it, is that, you know, a few years down the road, we're going to realize that not only does the thing that it doesn't do what it says on the label, you know, nobody saw the reasoning, the argument for it in the first place, and they just did it for the money. And then when money runs out, I mean, when money ran out, well, we got stuck with a black box that, you know, doesn't have any support, doesn't have any argument, and so forth. So I think that should be, like, transparency is nice, but I'm more worried, and this is, I think, comparable between the AI and CCTV, is that there's no political responsibility and no political agenda behind the transparency. Or once you publish the transparency and say, okay, this is a problem, here's how things are, now what should be done about it, you get crickets. And I think that's the really scary part.
Yeah, but for me, transparency is the first step. I mean, you need the information to kind of to organize a protest or to organize an advocacy around it and stuff like that. So, for example, it's the example of the national police in Spain, where we managed to get a response saying, no, we are not using it anymore. But they had been saying that they were piloting it for many years. So maybe I don't know at which point they made the decision, but the fact that people are asking about it, and I don't know, I want to believe that the fact that there is pressure from the outside asking about certain thing can make them shut down a system, or I don't know. But I think knowing about one system is the first step to actually to try to push for. I totally agree with what you say, that normally, very often, these things are used to evade responsibility. You put the decision inside the box, and then you put the box away, and the decision is hidden, and no one is questioning that decision anymore. So that's the scary part. But I think and I don't know if it was clear, but we don't think these registers are going to be the magic solution to anything. And even if you know that something exists because it's in the registry, then you have to have the fight about the FOIA, because maybe you ask for the details and they want to give it to you. So this is the beginning of a long path. And for us, definitely, the goal of all these things is to have a responsibility and accountability about why did you start using this, why is it still there, who's monitoring this, what's going on. So for me, clearly, the goal of all this work is to have accountability.
Any other questions and comments?
A question for Danes and Odan. How do you plan to develop your registry further? Do you plan to include any decision-making systems, or just the AI-based as you have it right now?
So our plan is not to develop it further. Our plan is for the government to develop their own register and actually maintain a public register by the government. I think really, and this is kind of from the beginning, from my introduction, like safe use of AI and transparent use of AI cannot be in the hands of efforts of civil society. It should be part of a government strategy that puts safe AI and kind of responsible AI first. And that's why, for us, we really hope that this is something that the government could actually, that this is something that could be like a public database, public tool, not maintained by us, but by the Ministry of Digital Transformation.
But have you started any concrete initiative in that sense?
So we have just today published recommendations for the development of that register. We have also notified the ministry. Ministry knows that we have that we will be preparing this, and we have already sent it to them. Hopefully, they will be positive towards that idea and decide to move forward.
Hi, Yasmina from Danes je nov dan. I would just add something to what Maja said. Is actually the register that we built. This is just like the basic information that we put there. We don't think that this is the whole package of information that should be there. There's like more that we think it should be there, and we are like willing to talk about this with the government or whoever wants to establish the register. But if this is not going to happen, we will continue our work developing this register, adding more systems and adding more information to the register. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question returning to the basic before we started the discussion. For me is the question, how do you address, or when you discuss with the Spanish government, the problem of responsibility and accountability of people, offices, functionaries, for the decision of automated system? Because at the end, the responsibility, accountability should still be for the real people, not the system itself. So this is the question I would like you to address.
That's a very good question, and I don't think there is a very good answer. I think part of the problem, or a big problem of these systems, is that very often they are designed to evade responsibility. So, for example, we have, in this first case, we talk at the beginning, Bosco, the electricity discounts. We use this argument about we need to know, now we are trying to get access to the source code, and the first two judges said no. We are now at the Supreme Court, because they say it's a national security risk and intellectual property, and we are saying we need to know what's going on because this thing is making mistakes, and like we don't want this to make mistakes. And one judge said, oh, but if there is a mistake, the affected person can put an appeal and the decision will be changed. Which is like, yeah, but I mean, poor vulnerable people don't know about this, and they just got a letter saying they are not allowed to have the discount. So why would they then go to court to appeal the decision? It's a crazy system. And we are also telling them the big issue here is that this mistake is automated, because the judge was saying everybody can make mistakes. Even if it was a human doing this, the human could also make a mistake. So what's the big deal? And we are saying the problem is that now it's automated. So thousands of people are applying for this. This same error is going to be done again and again and again. So what the judge is saying, you just appeal, use the normal administrative appeal procedure. To us doesn't make any sense, because it's at the scale of the issue is totally wrong. So that's the problem. At the moment, there is no accountability. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what to do. Yes, basically, I don't know. But it's a big problem, because this is a big issue. Or for example, there is talking about the other system I mentioned about the jail system, where when you ask for a permit based on if you're a foreigner or if you had support outside or not, you have a different risk assessment. So, for example, this is not fully automated, in the sense that risk assessment then goes to a judge, and the judge has to decide whether you get the permit or not. So the government is saying, this is not automated, this is not a problem. But the big issue with all these systems is that everybody well, no one wants to go against the black box, because if the box said high risk, the judge is going to say high risk. No one, the judge is going to be very, very, very careful not to release that person if it says high risk, because then it's a big problem if something happens. So there is the responsibility is kind of diluted, is lost, because the government can say the box is not making the decision. The judge can say, I'm doing what the box is saying. So then it's like, why didn't I get the permit? Just so there is no clear responsibility, and I think this is the big issue with all this. That it's very easy for the responsibility to get lost, and then no one is responsible. The judge is following the box. The box is not making the decision. So who is making the decision? And this is I think is the big underlying question. So there is no good answer for your question.
But on the basis of this complex answer, I have two naive suggestions. I think we really need to rethink our process of decision making, right? How decisions are made. It's not business as usual if like AI is really involved in the process of making decision, and you as a judge or whatever are there. I think there needs to be safeguards that warn you that the decision is you. And this is why I'm saying it's naive, but already, right, making sure that your last click isn't just submit the answer of the AI, but you need to now type down the answer, retype the answer, and it has to be your words, not just copy pasting whatever the AI suggested, for example. I think these are the small reconsiderations that really need to happen. And that's why I'm saying, like, reconsidering the process of decision making, revamping it.
Or, for example, if you are affected, which is this is part of the AI Act, you have the right to be informed that there is an automated system making the decision. The problem is this kind of gray cases where it's not fully automated and it's not fully AI, so it's below the threshold of the AI Act because it's not smart enough and it's not automated enough, but in reality, you are still being affected by an automated decision. So, but you should at least know that there is this thing going on, so you can say, wait, and you should have the right to ask for like a human supervision, say, look, wait, what's going on? I don't agree with this decision.
And then the second naive suggestion is education, right? So our public officials are trained on how to use ChatGPT, but they are not necessarily trained on how to kind of involve AI decision-making in their decision-making process. And I think this is also something, that's why for me registers are important, because only once we know where AI is being used, then we can also have this like conversation whether people who are interacting with the AI are properly trained, are aware of the risks, are aware of the accountability issues, the shortcomings of the AI, and so on. And if we don't have transparency, we don't have that. But I think in general, we really need in public administration more training on AI that's not just focused on how to use AI, but also awareness of the risks and the shortcomings of AI. Okay, more questions maybe? Comments?
I still find it worrying to engage in a debate around AI in public services, because there's no clear answer on how did this thing even start, right? So why did public services all of the sudden started using automated systems, not only for decision making, but also for myriad of other reasons, right? You have examples in Slovenia that are, the Ministry of Agriculture or something like that is doing something with AI, with calculating the size of the fields and yada yada yada. And looking at these cases, you can clearly see that in some cases it's really effective and it works because it's basic math. And in other cases, for example, your example with skin cancers and the wrong database or being trained on the wrong type of white people data, and that doesn't work with people who are not white, shows that it's a complete disaster, right? So you have two opposing examples, and this general talk about the usage of AI in public, services, you quickly realize that we shouldn't be talking about it like this, right? So it's very case-based, it's very specific, it's like these debates often remind me of like we would be debating the usage of tanks in public services, right? So, okay, the army may have some usage of tanks in their line of work, right? If you try to sell a tank to the Ministry of Health, they're gonna go, well, sure, we can probably do something with it. We never use the tank in our line of work, but now we're gonna try and find a way to use that instead of our regular, ambulances. So maybe so this is, I feel, something that, we're facing with the usage of AI, right? It's being forced down our throat by lobbyists, by grants, so all of a sudden people feel they have to use it, and now they're thinking about it in a way that, okay, we have to use this tool, so what can we do about it, right? And we're pouring all of our data, all of our resources, to feed these, companies that hold in their hands the AI tools, and at the same time we're not getting anything remotely as successful back, right? So maybe we should be really specific, we should really focus on niche systems, and maybe this will influence the public debate up to a point where we'll say, okay, sure, AI for this and this, but hell no for this and this, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I would just return to the accountability question, and I'm wondering whether it could be useful to have it as an argument, so to have an open code or somehow understand the documents and the data used, just in terms of also somehow transparency of the procedure, or what the weights are that decide how the black box, and because I'm not from the IT sector and I don't understand much, I'm just wondering whether this is also something that can be demanded from the developers at such database, for example, as you were mentioning, so to have a public database of AI systems, can it be a condition for its usage to actually have a clear line that says, okay, it will take this document and this will be given, I don't know, 5 points, just like now. The way probably public procurement procedures work and so. And yeah, I was just wondering if this could also be used as an argument at court. So it's more difficult if you're doing it just in public interest and not in specific case, but just to somehow demand this kind of transparency that it's demanded by law for everyone, that actually comes with the decision. When it says no, it actually then explains that this system used this data, and I guess the system then explains how it decided.
David has been in court for past 6 years, so he can talk about that.
Yeah, it depends a lot on it clearly depends a lot on the system, because some system, like this particular system, the Bosco thing, the electricity thing, for example, there it has to follow the specification of the law, so it's a very kind of simple system. We may have other more complex ones that are trying to do more elaborate stuff, but we think it's a good argument for the court. Now the thing is, we have to see what the Spanish judges think, and also we have a access to information law that is not very good, in our opinion. So the big argument we are now having at the Supreme Court is that saying exactly this, like, we are affected by these decisions, we should be able to look into the box and see exactly how it's done. But the government is saying it's a security risk because the hackers will come and hack the system, and blah, 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 intellectual property, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm biased because I've been pushing this case for many years. I agree that they should at least explain more. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen at court. And the AI Act is granting some of these rights. I mean, you know more than I do about the details, but there is this right to an explanation. Well, I don't know, like the AI Act allows you to, if you are affected, to ask for information, but whether the system is AI, that's a big question about the AI Act. Like whether some of these systems are going to actually be covered by the AI Act. No one knows, there is a bigger political issue, which is like, no one knows what's going to happen with the AI Act, because there is a big discussion now because of the international politics about stopping the AI Act, because Europe is maybe getting afraid that there's too much regulation and the states is pushing not to. So who knows? Maybe in next year they stop the AI Act for a while. So the question is, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Do you know what they're going to stop the AI Act? But at least the debate was there. Like some people in Europe are pushing to stop the implementation, because they think we are slow in innovation, and now the big American companies are pushing, saying, "Whoa, this is too much regulation, you should stop." So there is a certain people and certain companies and countries are trying to stop the AI Act. So even if even the limited rights that are in the AI Act may not come soon.
We might deregulate the AI Act before we implement it effectively. Any other questions? If not,
So going back to transparency and what the last question was about, so knowing about the weights and stuff, I don't think it works like that. So I don't think it's a series of tubes you have to connect in the correct order to get something out of the system. I think these neuron networks and stuff really work in a really unpredictable, and you can't pre-compute the answer before the network computes it, right? And even if you try to reverse engineer it, you won't get much out of it, because it's not A plus B plus apple equals, something. So I don't think focusing on just on transparency and on trying to really understand the system in order to sort of prevent its shortcomings, I don't think it's the rational way. It's not the right way, because the system itself, it's not rational and it cannot be subjected to ration, right? I think it's more important for us to start questioning the ground rules of why do we even need this, and just not blindly, but just not blindly, but just like blanket assign the responsibility, right? Because it's not that hard assigning responsibility if you have a public or a political body using automatic decision-making systems to further decision for themselves, right, or for their institution. Even though they're saying, even in cases where they're saying, there's a person in the end confirming the automatic decision-making system, because we all know how that looks in practice, right? The machine says something and you just go, okay, let's go forward. Because it doesn't make sense otherwise, right? So inspecting everything the machine did, that won't save you time, that won't save you energy, it's going to prolong everything. So, yeah, just thanks.
Yeah, just to clarify, when it depends a lot on the particular system, particular case, but when we talk about transparency, I mean, it can be trying to look inside the box and how it's built or blah, blah, blah. But I think it's more general. So it's also understanding the process, for example, like how is it used, who is using it, is it fully automated or not? Like, or for example, is there anyone monitoring the results? How do you check that this thing works? How was it trained, or who made the decision to use it? Is it replacing an existing process, or is it a new process? So for me, that's also transparency. And actually, the best examples, the register in Valencia, for example, or in some other good examples, there is that part also. It's not just about what's inside the box, but it's about what's around the box, who's using it, what's the process. Because for me, that's useful to have the discussion. What I was going to say something else. That unfortunately, even that information, often we cannot get it. Like the police, for example, didn't want to tell us how often did you use this system, in which cities, Did anyone check the results? How did you train it exactly? They didn't even want to give information about that. So unfortunately, and for me, that's the important transparency. Sometimes you want to look into the box, but often you need to start by looking all around the box to say, how is the whole thing working? So for me, that's the full transparency of the full process is important.
Okay, I think we spent enough time talking about the black box in this black box. Before I finish, if you are working for public administration body and you are planning to implement an AI system, please call us, send us an email. We would love to know more about it. If you are Ministry of Digital Transformation and would like to implement this proposal, we are looking forward to working with you. And on that, thank you all for joining us for this debate. Please visit our website where we will also publish the report itself, the recommendations, and also in a couple of days' time, we will also publish the video of this conversation. We will be continuing this event at 6 p.m. today with a round table on biometrics, so you're all welcome to join us later. Thank you so much.